So the Creality K1 series machines has a few issues. Two of those issues is bed level and then bed warping and bed meshing. Now, what can we really do about this? We have to make a few modifications to the printer to get the best results that we can. One of the reasons is the Creality K1 series machines use something called load cells to make their bed mesh. Load cells themselves are not an accurate way to measure anything. The problem is when you put it in a 3D printer with a nozzle using tap, that's the issue. So the way load cells, for anybody that doesn't know, works, there are 4 load cells, one in each corner of the bed. The Z-screws move the bed up and down, and the nozzle will tap ever so slightly on the bed. The problem is if there's any severe vibration, you have the machine next to something else that's vibrating, you have it on an uneven, unbalanced surface, or you have filament on the nozzle. Filament on the nozzle is a really big, really hard to avoid thing. That's one of the reasons that the Creality K1C put the nozzle wiper in the back. But I want to be honest with you, the nozzle wiper, not that good. Not only is it not that good, it's kind of a horrible implementation of a nozzle wiper. I think it was last minute, they needed it, they knew they needed it. The nozzle doesn't work with load cells. It's a bad design. So let's go ahead and change the way that the K1 series machines probes the bed. Now, the way we're going to do this is by installing something called the BTT Eddy, or the BTT Eddy. The way this probe works is it sits on the side of your tool head up here, and it uses the eddy currents off the removable build plate to generate a bed mesh. It never physically touches your bed, leading to a more accurate and more precise bed mesh. So let's go ahead and get the BTT Eddy installed. Can't really see inside the machine when it's off. And it's not exactly the best idea to be working on it when it's on, although I do. So now that I actually have a light up here, what I'm going to go ahead and do is something I'm normally not doing when I'm working on these printers. And that is I'm going to remove the front door. 2 reasons. It's a little hard to work with the camera, and the other reason is a little bit extra safety since I might not be paying attention as much as I normally do. To do this, if you want to feel safer while working in the printer, you don't actually have to remove all 4 screws. You just need to remove the top 2 screws. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. Now, I've actually already done a handful of things for this printer. I didn't know I was going to be making this video. One of those things is I've already taken the BTT Eddy out of its original housing. And the reason is, while the original housing's okay, and you can just screw it into the side of the tool head, I wanted something that would be a little closer to the nozzle, a little more secure on the side of the print head. And so I went ahead and made this carbon fiber mount. And this is just going to pressure fit right inside there with the cable. And the cable channel is made so that the cable both has relief, but it's tight and it's not coming out at all. You will most likely, if you pull on the cable, you'll most likely break your tool head before you break this part if it's printed out of nylon carbon fiber, which I highly recommend. Now, the BTT Eddy actually comes with a USB cable. I've already modified it, but don't worry, it's not far modified outside of what comes with the BTT Eddy. So what we need to do before we do anything is we need to figure out a way to get this USB cable through this back channel. Now, Creality has gracefully decided that it would be a good idea to glue this back channel on. Highly unnecessary, but now it makes our job a little more difficult. So where does the BTT Eddy actually plug in? Well, it actually plugs in to the motherboard under here, or the MCU. And the way we get to that is there's 4 Allens and 2 on the frame, 4 in the feet, 2 on the actual bottom plate. you should have an Allen that came with your Creality toolkit. So if you have that, go ahead and start removing the feet. I like to stack them all in a little pile off to the side and waiting for me. When you pull this plate off, there are wires up here for the fan, and we want to be careful the way we pull this off. So just gently flip it up and lay it on the side of the printer. Now right here, this section right here, this is a JST connector. And what we need to do is we need to route the USB cable through that channel over here into the GST connector. And I'll make sure to have the actual GST connector in the description. So now that channel that I showed you earlier comes out right here where this bundle of wires comes through. And what we need to do is we need to fish something up through that channel so we can hook it to our USB cable and pull it back through, because you're not going to be able to do it the other way. Trust me, I have already tried. I'm just using this piece of USB that I cut off. It was a fairly long cable, and I don't really need this, so I'm just using this to fish through, and then I will pull my eddy wire back through with it. So what tends to happen once you put the USB cable through the bottom or whatever you're using to fish, there's a channel cover right here where it tends to get stuck on. Now, luckily, this one's not that hard to remove. I have a few printers back here, all identical. Some of them have had pretty good glue down, but still you can pop it off. Some of them have not. Now, once I get that out of the way, I should be able to fish the rest of that cable up. And here we go. Here is the rest of that cable. We're not going to use this cable. We're going to use this to pull our actual cable back through. Now you'll actually want to go ahead and tape this cable to this cable so you can go ahead and pull it through. I would recommend something like electrical tape. I don't have any of that on hand right now, but what I do have well fitting is this caution heavy stickers. So it's not stupid if it works, I've been told. So let's go ahead and roll this caution heavy on and see if we can pull that through. Now, I don't really trust that, so let's go ahead and do 2. Better safe than having to do it twice. You could definitely do it better, but there we go. Let's pull that through. Don't pull it too fast. Don't pull it too hard. Just kind of work it through. Nice little snug tugs. If you get stuck, pull it back the other direction and then try again. And there we go. We're through. So now that we got that pulled through, I'm going to go ahead and solder the new JST connector on the end here. Don't worry, I'll have any connectors or anything you need in the description. So first things first, I actually need a solder surface, and what better surface than a part that I have zero intention on ever using again. I tend to use the textured PEI sheets, so this smooth plate looks like an excellent solder surface. So we're going to go ahead and cut about this much of the sheathing away right here, maybe about 2 inches, or I don't know, 40 millimeters, 4 centimeters. I guess that's how metric works. So we're going to go ahead and cut this sheathing away. And underneath this, on most USB cables, especially the one that comes with the BTT Eddy, is there's actually shielding. I'm going to be jump cutting this quite a bit, I can already tell. I'm going to make it look way easier than it is. It's actually not hard. It's not easy with the cameras in your face. I'll tell you what, I got a lot more respect for these YouTube guys now, huh? Okay. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut this shielding away. We don't really need it at all. Let's get that out of the way. Pull that foil away too. We don't really need that. Now we have our 4 USB wires right here. And before we actually cut those so we can solder them, let's go ahead and get some heat shrink on them. If you don't have heat shrink, you can use electrical tape. I used it for years. I outgrew it, and now it bugs the absolute hell out of me. So here we go. Pre-install my 4 shrink wrap tubes. I don't know how much of this is actually going to make it in. I don't seem to have wire cutters that small, so it is what it is, right? Now for the JST connector and the USB cable, quite often, whatever ones you get online, if they're pre-wired like this, which is the ones I like, the colors don't actually match the colors in a USB cable. But luckily, we can get around that. The connectors in here are already USB connectors. So they tell us what order that the actual USB colors need to go. So we see from the top, it's red, white, green, black. So all we have to do is make sure that we index this JST connector right there. And the top right there would be yellow, white, red, black. So all we have to do is make sure that those line up with the way that this index is to match the ones below it. Let's do this. So if you ever decide for some reason that you want to pick up a soldering iron or want to get more in depth with something and you don't have one, the Pine Cell 64 is an excellent option. I've had much larger, more expensive solder stations, and let me tell you, this has been an absolute godsend. It goes everywhere with me. It goes in my tool bag, and I couldn't be the happier with it. Now I'm going to go ahead and level with you. I have a heat gun, but I'm too lazy to get it out. And most of my life, I've just been using a lighter, which is perfectly fine. And some people might tell you, don't do that. But the trick is, just don't burn the damn wire. And the last one. And in a second, we're going to have a really nice USB to JST adapter. Look at that. So what I want to go ahead and do is make sure that I route this USB cable over there with the new JST end above all this stuff and out of the way of the belts. We don't want it touching the belts. So let's get it back here. Be a little careful that you don't pull out any wires or break anything that's already there. You shouldn't have an issue as long as you don't act completely ignorant. So use a little bit of common sense and you should be fine. So now that we're over there, all we got to do is plug the cable in exactly how the connector indexes. And look at that. Let's pull a little bit back. The BTT Eddy, they're gracious enough to provide us with some zip strips. So let's go ahead and use those right now. What I want to make sure that I do is I keep that away from these belts and these Z-screw over here. So we're going to put it up in this corner just like that. And then zip tie it in. I'm too lazy to get my flush cuts. Yunk. So now that we actually have our USB cable through, what we want to do before we do anything else is we want to go ahead and put on some of these clips. Now, these clips are actually on printables.com, and I'll make sure to leave a link in the description. You want to do this before you put the probe in because it becomes incredibly difficult to do it afterwards. And I'm not kidding when I say it's incredibly difficult to do in the first place. So yeah, after you actually get one of the clips on, what you want to do is go ahead and just slide it out of the way towards the back for now. Okay. So as you can see here, I actually have 5 of these clips on. And the way these clip on is they actually clip on to the underside of the drag chain. The very first one you want to do, you want to make sure that it's 2 steps away from the knuckle. You don't want it up here. You want it 2 steps back if you're using the BTT Eddy and the mount that I provided. So 1, 2. Step it on the back. Sorry. Put it on the front and then pull it back. There you go. Just like that. Clicked in. Now the way I do it is I skip 3 notches. So 1, 2, 3. It would go here. You could do it whatever way you think works best for you. Very last one. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so the next thing that we need to do is we need to actually go ahead and install the sensor. The BTT Eddy actually comes with a housing. I've already removed it. I just taken a knife and popped the outside plastic off. It's not that hard to do. There's no screws or anything like that. You can use the housing as is. You don't have to use a custom mount, but I like using a custom mount because it gives me a little bit closer to the nozzle and it makes it a little bit more secure on the tool head. So the first thing we need to do is we need to go ahead and make sure that we plug in to the JST connector right here. It is indexed, so you should have no issue with that at all. Once it's indexed, if you are using this mount, you want to go ahead and make sure that the side that is sticking out towards the opposite of the flat end right there. Now, this exact Eddy mount does take a little bit of pressure to push in. You don't want to go crazy, just take your time. Once you have it in, it should be flush all the way to the bottom. Because this specific mount is so tight, what I do is I take an Allen head and I, right at the very corner of the board where there is no surface mounted components, I just give it a little bit of a push because this is a pressure fit mount. And just like that, we're done. Now, the next thing you need to do is you need to make sure that you put the USB cable inside the chain right here, inside the routing channel. Now, the routing channel can be a little bit difficult because it is designed where you absolutely cannot pull the USB cable out. So if it's a little difficult, just take some time. It can be done. Inside the box for the BTT Eddy, you're going to have a few screws. There's some shorter ones, and there's two shorter ones, and there's two longer ones. Now what we want to do is we want to go ahead and pull out one of the shorter stainless steel screws. So now that we have the stainless steel screw, the short one out of the BTT Eddy box, we want to go ahead and make sure that we screw it in to the mount. We're just going to screw it in just enough where we feel it barely coming out. The back. And there we go. So let's go ahead and move the tool head towards the back. Don't worry, the machine's off, the motor's off. As long as you're gentle, you are not going to break your tool head. The way this mount works, we need to fish in between the rods. So the area on the back of this tool head where the screw goes in is an area that's meant for like self-tapping. So you want to make sure that you're screwing it in, but once you get to the end, you don't want to over tighten it because you will strip that and then the mount won't be securely in place. So now that we actually have the probe mounted how we want it, what we want to do is we want to make sure that we have enough slack right here on the line where it's not yanking on it. So we move it gently all the way to the front corner. And you can see right here, that's pulling on that. And I'm not exactly happy about that. So I can pull a little bit out and then slowly fish it through these clips right here until I have enough at the front where I'm happy. And you can see right there, now we have more than enough to not have an issue when the printer goes all the way to that corner. And that corner is the only corner that really stresses the cable. So right there, we should be good. So now that we've gotten to this point and we've gotten the probe installed, I'm going to go ahead and switch gears. I'm going to change the firmware on the machine so it supports the probe. I'm not going to do that in this video, and the reason I'm not going to do that is things are constantly changing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to link to the GitHub for that firmware. It's very easy for most people, and if you need help, there is a whole community of people that can help you with that. But I'm not going to do that in this video. But little rubber duck. BTT Eddy has decided that we all need a little more friends in our lives. So, little rubber duck. So as you can hear, the printer is actually on and ready to go. The probe's perfect. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a mesh calibrate so you can see exactly what's going on. So notice the probe's not touching the bed at all. Not only is it that, but it's a hell of a lot faster. And trust me, it's a hell of a lot more accurate. And what this does is it lets us start worrying about our bed level and getting an accurate idea of exactly how warped our bed is. Now, I was going to do the next step, worrying about the bed and the level in the same video, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go ahead and split this into two videos and just let it be two separate different issues. So at this point, I guess it's just thanks BTT for the rubber ducky. That's it.